We had a game this past Sunday. It was billed as maybe one of the matchups of the year in the NFL. Two Titans clashing, a chance to see who can really separate themselves in this hotly contested NFC West. Then on paper, it would have appeared to be just that. A game that came right down to the wire, 2 points separating these two teams. Both great defenses on display doing what they do. And so from a Seattle Seahawks fan standpoint and Seahawks standpoint, you walked in and you stood toe-to-toe with one of the toughest there is out there, and you were able to hang with them and nearly steal away a victory if that 61-yarder could have just drifted a little bit more to the left and had a little bit more length to it. But I think that a lot of Hawk fans aren't necessarily going to be in that place exactly coming out the end of this loss to the Los Angeles Rams. I think you're going to hear a lot of just kind of condensing this game down into a couple of mere factors. And those factors being the Seattle Seahawks defense was magnificent, and Sam Darnold had a Darnold day that so many people that hate on Darnold and don't like Darnold and will tell you that this is the guy that can't lead you anywhere would tell you this is the kind of game he will give you. This is the kind of game of showing you this is who he really is. That's going to be their short answer from a lot of people. It's not going to be my answer necessarily. So if you want a little bit more expansion upon just defense great, Sam bad, let's try to maybe give a little bit more into the nuance on this. And the nuance on this is that there's a lot kind of in play at this game offensively and what happened in this game. I don't think that we want to get lost in the defensive performance here. They were outstanding in this game. They were put in remarkably tough situations, short fields, and having to stand really tall. They had the end situation at the end where they had to hold it down, where you can't allow a first down. You're trying to get the ball back to the offense. They were able to do so there, which was huge in that moment to give the offense even a chance in this game. There's no denying that the defense across the board played really good. First, the Rams were able to move the ball a little bit early on, but Seattle made a couple of adjustments, figured things out quick, and they shut everything down really across the board. A couple of big runs maybe here and there, but everything else was really battened down for the most part. As far as the defense goes, they did a very good job in coverage. You didn't allow Puka or Devontae Adams to really go off in a big way. You were able at times to supply some really good pressure on Matt Stafford and not allow them to really destroy you with the play-action game. You didn't let the tight ends do much damage to you. Matt barely threw for any yards on this day, and not just because they weren't trying to throw it all. He definitely had the attempts down, but he did a good job defensively across the board. There's going to be nowhere and no one not to, I think, say, hey, you had a pretty good day on this day, that no one had a really horribly bad day or just was awful. There's a couple bad moments, but overall, those guys were sound across the board, and they were really standing up from a resiliency standpoint, where not only was it a great defensive performance, but it was one where this was a defense that was having to, again, really the degree of difficulty turn up against them, and they could have really wilted there. But it shows, I think, a testament to the strength of this team and how great this defense can be, that they're able to withstand that barrage there and still remain strong. The offense is going to get a lot of the look coming out of this game despite the grade A defensive performance, and that is because of those 4 interceptions by Sam Darnold. Now, let's get this out the way again, because a lot of people, I think, will take what I say today as me covering up for Sam or being a Sam stan. It's not what I'm trying to do at all here in this way. Those 4 interceptions can't happen. You can't turn over the ball in a game like this. This was the basically biggest key of this game coming into it, was winning the turnover battle or at least keeping it as a stalemate. And you weren't able to do that in this game. And Sam, on these interceptions, many of them are, when you look at it from Sam's perspective, ones where there's a better decision for him to be made there. Now, there's more explanation to me, and this is where I don't like some of the simplistic Sam just bad, Sam do wrong, Sam horrible kind of approach that we're hearing out there from some Hawk fans, because some of this is the play calling within the scope of this game. Clint Kubiak was a little bit odd in his approach in this one, where so many of these games coming up into this point, he's been hyper-focused on running the ball, whether it's going good or going bad. He's going to stay with that run and stay with it throughout the game, and you're going to get, at times, many more attempts running the ball than you're going to get passing attempts. And you really felt like there's a lot of that then mixed in with a lot of the short passing attack in there for Sam. And yes, you're taking your shots down the field within that as well, but only at those moments the defenses are really bringing up a lot at the line of scrimmage and really giving you an open door to go take those shots down the field. One of the oddities in the play calling in this game is that the Rams really do commit to running a light box. Less defenders up around the line of scrimmage, around that front 7, more defenders back in space and coverage. They do this at a pretty strong statistical level, as high to a degree as anybody in the league. And what is really interesting about this is that every team coming into this game facing Seattle was really driving up the stack boxes on the Seahawks specifically. Now, this didn't matter if it was a team coming in that tended to lean to stack boxes or not. Everybody saw the way Seattle's running these condensed splits and the heavy 12 personnel and getting the fullback in there. And they said, okay, we're going to bring a lot of bodies down in the line of scrimmage. We're going to bring this up and we're going to congest all this across the board. And Seattle, I think, from Kubiak's perspective, was was anticipating for some weird reason that the Rams were going to do the very same thing in this football game. That's not what the Rams did. They stayed who to what they are, and they're going to drop to depth. They're going to drop a lot of guys to coverage. And yet you saw Sam on these dropbacks looking deep down the field and going back into these 5 to 7 step drops a lot of the time, and he's trying to take a play down the field as far as the first read, it would appear, rather than just trying to get the ball out of his hands. As the Niners showed this year in a couple of games, and their ability to move the ball up the field, but albeit move the ball up the field patiently, that's the approach you have to take with the Rams, is you've got to take those easy completions and just work your way on up. Seattle wasn't really seemingly doing that at all times, and that was a contributing factor to some of these interceptions. I think we can come to find that there might be some other explanations, like on the Arroyo route. You heard Olsen talk about it on the telecast, that maybe that was an option route where Arroyo's supposed to cut it in, and maybe the rookie just wasn't on that exact detail, but we don't know for sure unless we know actually what the play call was. You still would like to Sam not to exactly throw into tight coverage unless he kind of sees a little bit of the break. But again, some of the option route is that you're hoping you both read at the same time, and he's trying to throw that with anticipation, which is something that Sam Darnold is going to do inherently in his game. That's part of what makes Sam Darnold Sam Darnold. But there's other throws in there where he's throwing off his back foot on the first interception, falling away, he's under pressure. You've got to either throw that away, or I think Sam needs at times to try to use his legs a little bit more, to be willing to take the 5 or 6 yard scramble. It's not necessarily going to be a big play, but just take the couple yard run, take the positive play and get down. Get a positive result on a play that's potentially broken down in front of you. And instead of that, it seems like Sam on a lot of these throws, both the play calling didn't help, but Sam's trying to do too much of the Superman stuff, too much of extending beyond himself there to try to make a play happen. And sometimes you got to let the game come to you a little bit, and you can't force it as much. I say this because I think this is the correctable part of this. It's not to excuse it, but it's to say that there's not something inherently broken in Sam Darnold's game that can't be fixed here, but that you can go to him and say, okay, we got to be safer with this. When you get late into a play in the pocket, things are breaking down around you. Instead of this feeling and thinking of, okay, improvisation time. Okay, I'm going to keep the head up and I'm going to throw it down. Maybe more of a thinking of break the pocket, throw it away. Lean more into playing your defense and your really good special teams. Understand that you can lean on those guys and they're going to carry you through. That's not the worst result. The worst result is turnovers. The worst result is multiple turnovers. The even worst result is multiple turnovers onto a short field for your defense. That can happen, and that's been happening far too much even beyond this game recently with Sam. It's got to be corrected here with him. I'm not trying to dismiss this or not say that this isn't a part of his game that's troublesome right now. It is, and it's growing more troublesome kind of by the moment a little bit with this, and that needs to halt. I think he's had like 4 straight games with multiple interceptions. You're trying to be a little bit of a run-based balanced team that can take its shots and throw down the field, and you don't want to be completely scared to death of having an interception or turnover. But at the same point in time, when you have your defense playing like the best defense in the NFL, you kind of need to lean on that a little bit and let them help to carry you the day on that. And this is another lesson I just think Sam's going to learn with this. Hopefully with this too, with Kubiak, he will understand, learn with, I go up against an opponent that's going to have a little bit of these light boxes. I can't just keep trying to take my shots and throw into traffic. I felt like today, a lot of the play calling in some of these throws was throwing into sometimes the teeth of the defense rather than always giving you the opening out there to go attack like you've had throughout a lot of the course of this season. Jackson Smith and Jigba went over 100 yards, and he looked really good in this game. Cooper Kupp was struggling a little bit at times. It seems like to get separation. I think that was in general a problem with this offense and the receiving core here in this game, where you just couldn't quite get those guys with a lot of separation on routes. And this is why Sam's looking down and he's not seeing it. He's looking over here, he's not seeing it. But it was confusing for him and what he was seeing on the back end from the Rams. In addition to that, they seemed to be having a little bit in their bag, being Shula their defensive coordinator and keeping things under control. And Sam just didn't have any answers, and Kubiak didn't have a lot of answers. Also just going away from things that kind of were sort of working, and I don't know why they did. A.J. Barner in this game was really efficient and effective. You were able to go at their inside linebackers who are not the best in coverage, especially Landman, and find success, and yet it just seemed like Seattle would kind of just generally drift away from it. And it seems like Kubiak at times, as I've mentioned a few times over, will sometimes just generally move away from stuff even when other things are working fine. We've seen this with the trick plays and the Milrow situations, and it was that way with this game as well. We saw at the end of that first half a really great drive where they moved it up the field and really on the back of running the football. And you moved the ball pretty well in that first half. You need to get more touchdowns. You need to be more effective in getting the red zone. But the specific thing you saw as you got to the end of that second quarter was that you were able to run the ball on this Rams front. You were able to move those bodies off the line. Coming back to, again, you're having a lighter box that you're getting to deal with there. They're trying to drop more bodies in coverage. You got to kind of go one way or the other defensively about what you're going to protect. And so they're saying, we're not going to protect that front. We think those guys can get it done done with that lighter box, you were having success, and yet then you come back in the second half for the first play out the gate, first down, trying to pass it, trying to take a shot down the field. Just seemed like that was where the onus was at offensively a little bit and what you were trying to drive towards. And it's just kind of strange because you're going into that teeth of that defense rather than attacking them where they're lean, where they're light, where they're weak. Hopefully this is another part of the strategy as they move on to the game a couple weeks from now where you got to play this Rams team once again, where Kubiak adjusts and leans more into that running game as it's working. It's not that the running game was just going off and exploding, but you were finding the consistent yards. You were getting less of those TFLs that we've seen at times this season when those teams put so many bodies up around the line of scrimmage and give your blockers nowhere to go. Give them no real clearance to be found in the game as far as opening up any legit holes because there's just too many bodies down there to block. It just kind of comes down to that. I don't undersell the defensive performance in this game. Ernest Jones was a warrior back there out on his knee. He was great in the run game. You had a couple of runs that broke, and he said in this press conference that those were on him on those, but I thought he overall was pretty strong in this game. Everybody across the board seemed to do their job up front with the gap integrity especially. You were able to create the quick pressure that I didn't think you were going to be able to create here against Matt Stafford today because he's so good about getting the ball out of his hands. The team did a really good job of being able to really button down the run, but also then jump on Stafford in the play action game so that when he went to that play action, you had a defender right there into his face when he was turning around, and a lot of times he was then just having to dirt it. It was really cool to see the adjustment come into play too with McDonald, where out the gate the Rams kind of had Seattle on their initial game plan, it seemed like a little bit. Seattle makes the adjustment, and all the rest of the way through the game, you've got things in pretty good control as long as the Seahawks offense isn't putting the defense onto a short field. But that's going to be the thing that carries through this game, unfortunately, is going to be beyond anything else, beyond the defensive performance, which was great, Darnold's performance. And there's a part of it that I understand. There's a part of it that I also say it is just a game. This is not the man. A couple games against a team over a couple season period does not make it that player. He's got a season and a half here of games here that we've been able to watch with him where he's played some really high-level football at the position. Got to clean this stuff up. There's no two ways about it. You're not getting anything done in the playoffs. You may not even make the playoffs. You're turning the ball over at this high of a rate. And this is a defense playing too good, and you have too many good parts of this team to allow turnovers to kind of sink the whole ship. So you're going to have to be a little bit more protective in the approach. Got to have a little bit more of a plan when things kind of break down around him and not just, I'm going to throw it. And certainly not that I'm going to do the jump ball interception throw that he did at the end of the game for his fourth interception, which was just horrible, inexcusable. And again, a backbreaker and one where those people, for as much as it is kind of tough to say, well, it just all comes down to Sam and Sam bad. It's also where they've got some footing to stand on here where you go, a jump pass, Sam? Really? You remove one interception off the board in this game, considering how close it came down to a 61-yard field goal attempt at the end of the game. You just get that one interception wiped off, you probably go get this victory. So this is where I do get those people's standpoint on the hyper frustration with Sam and also wondering if there's not something inherently beneath the surface just kind of broken in him. I don't believe that that's the case or that's what's going on, but I get what they're saying with that. I thought it was cool to the end of this game that Sam Darnold was able to rebound a little bit, get you down on the touchdown drive as time is starting to expend out. They certainly could have been a little bit more urgent in their approach at that time. Sucked to lose Gray Zabel at the end of the game to a knee injury, but you were also able at the end of the game to drive from the 1 yard line all the way up the field to get to that 61-yard opportunity. And this happened because the Rams punter nailed one of the more money clutch punts you will see in your life. He skied this thing up in the air. He dropped it at like the 3 yard line. He rolled it right out of bounds. It was literally like kissing the pylon, but not quite kissing the pylon. It was just like right here, lip to lip, somehow rolls out of bounds right there at the one. So you've got to drive all the way up the field there with about 50 seconds and one timeout in your pocket to try to get all the way up there. That was going to be a tall task, but yet Sam Darnold was able to get them up the field into position in that moment. A little bit like he did earlier this season in the Cardinal game. I'm not saying he's great on down the line, but it was good to see that on a day where things just weren't breaking his favor, when your starting pitcher didn't have his fastball, he was able to kind of gut his way through and find his footing down near the end and hopefully learn some lessons off of this. Both your quarterback and your coordinator, and that's the major point here, is that a lot of Hawk fans will say, see, this shows you we aren't ready to go. And this is still a long season left remaining. You get a chance at this Rams team again down the line. The schedule is very makeable to allow you to get in the playoffs, and anything can happen in the playoffs. And this team has definitely traveled very well if we've got to go out on the road. But it is a team where you can see the things now that they've got to correct and fix as we go down the line within this. And Kubiak, I think, is a grade A coordinator. I really do. I do think sometimes he'll deviate from what just works well and right, kind of for no reason, just because I think he thinks he's got to be multiple and varied. When you can just sometimes stay with the meat and potatoes, that's going to fill you up. And Sam Darnold has got to take better stock of the situations around him and not make a bad play worse. This is something that we had to cross last year with Geno, and this is at times, I think, when you get a quarterback that's been in the sport for a while and got a little bit of the gunslinger flow to him, and a lot of what they do on the good side is fitting tight balls into small spaces. It's also that you got to find that perfect struck balance of where you're taking your shots and where you're being careful with the ball. And when you got a grade A defense, when they're not allowing the opposition to score up and down the field over and over again, and it means then you don't have to score up and down the field over and over again. So you got to be very careful with the ball. You got to limit down those turnovers, especially where it's controllable. If it goes and bounces off a guy's helmet, that's one thing. A tip pass, that's going to happen in this offense with the West Coast offense. But those bad throws late, back across your body, into the middle of the field, that's the stuff where it's going to be hard to excuse and hard to understand what exactly you're thinking in those moments. But I think this is correctable. I don't think it's inherently something broken in Sam Darnold. And I think, though, we come out of this game, we played them tight. Many of the people will saying Seattle is a mirage. They're not real because, see, this just shows. After you get them up against a real opponent, see, this just shows when you get Sam Darnold against the Rams. I don't think that this is really the case of truth. I think this team still has a lot to it. And we may have to wait a year down the line for this to fully come to bloom, but that doesn't still toss away the potentiality for it to come to bloom right now. This is the third youngest team in the NFL. You never know when this thing's going to explode. You never know when this final step, and make no mistake about it, it is a final step, is going to come forward. These players are hungry. They want it. Listen to them in their press conference. There's no shying away. There's no excuses. There's no throwing Sam under the bus. They're locked in right now, and you know they want it. So they're going to do everything in their control to kind of right this ship. I think we got a smart coaching staff that's going to know the right steps as we go forward. Keep the faith, my fellow 12s, and please don't you ever forget, go Hawks.